The distress signal traveled through space for 3 long weeks before anyone heard it. It moved from star to star, carrying a message of fear and desperation. The beings who sent it were dying, and they knew it. On the planet Celestia Prime, Ambassador Zixthala stood in the Great Communication Center. Her blue skin flickered with patterns of worry as she watched the massive screens around her. Each screen showed the same terrible news. Another colony had gone dark. Another world had fallen silent. Any response to our calls for help? She asked the communication officer beside her. The officer, whose name was Kel Tam, shook his head slowly. His own skin showed patterns of sadness. Nothing, Ambassador. The Galactic Council received our message 3 cycles ago. The Aquarian Alliance got it 2 cycles ago. Even the Peaceful Union has heard our plea. But no one is coming. Zixthala felt her heart sink. She had known this might happen, but she had hoped. The Caparian people were gentle. They had never fought a war. They did not even have words for many of the violent things that other species might do. Their whole civilization was built on harmony and peace. But peace meant nothing when monsters came from the dark. The Vorac Empire had appeared at their borders 6 months ago. No one knew where they came from or what they truly wanted. They simply arrived, destroyed everything in their path, and moved on to the next world. They had already taken 15 Caparian colonies. Millions of innocent beings were dead or missing. "Show me the tracking data again," Zixthala said. The main screen changed to show a map of their local star region. Red dots marked where Vorac ships had been seen. Green dots showed Caparian worlds that were still safe. The pattern was clear and horrible. The red dots were moving straight toward Celestia Prime, their homeworld. "How long do we have?" she asked. "At their current speed, perhaps 2 weeks," Keltam replied. "Maybe less if they stop taking resources from each world they destroy." Zixthala closed her eyes and tried to think. The Caparian military consisted of 12 patrol ships designed to rescue people from accidents. They had no weapons beyond small tools meant to clear space debris. What could they possibly do against an empire that destroyed worlds for fun? She opened her eyes and looked at the communication board. "Send the message again. To everyone. Every species, every government, every organization that might listen. Tell them we are about to die and we need help." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the great station Harmony floated in the space between 3 star systems. It was the meeting place of the Galactic Council, where representatives from dozens of peaceful species gathered to discuss trade, science, and art. War was not something they talked about, because war was something they had evolved beyond. The emergency session had been called quickly when the Caparian message arrived. Representatives from 20 different species sat in the great circular chamber. The air was filled with different breathing gases, and translation devices worked hard to turn alien languages into something everyone could understand. Counselor Veltar of the Aquarian Alliance floated in his water-filled suit. His voice came through the translators as slow and thoughtful. "We have all heard the desperate calls from the Caparian Confederation. The situation is indeed tragic." "Tragic, yes, but what can we do?" asked Representative Nixola from the Crystal Collective. Her rock-like body sparkled as she spoke. "None of us have military ships. We gave up such things long ago when we became civilized." A murmur went through the chamber. It was true. Most species in the galaxy had stopped building weapons thousands of years ago. Why would they need them? Space was vast, resources were plentiful, and every intelligent species they had met was peaceful. "Perhaps we could negotiate," suggested another delegate. "Send a diplomatic mission to speak with these Vorac." "They do not respond to communication," Veltar replied sadly. "The Caparians have tried many times. The Vorac simply attack and destroy. They seem to take pleasure in causing pain." The chamber fell quiet. None of them had experience with such beings. In their peaceful galaxy, problems were solved with discussion and compromise. Violence was something that happened on primitive worlds, among species that had not yet learned better ways. "Then I fear there's nothing we can do," said another counselor. "We can offer to take refugees if any escape. We can provide medical aid and supplies, but we cannot fight a war. We do not know how." Light years away from Station Harmony, in a small monitoring station on the edge of known space, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat at his duty station drinking his 3rd cup of coffee that day. The coffee was terrible, as it always was on Blackwater Station, but it helped him stay awake during the long, boring shifts. Blackwater Station was humanity's farthest listening post. It floated in empty space far from Earth, watching and listening for anything unusual. Most days, Morrison and his crew of 12 people heard nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional signal from Earth ships passing through the area. Today was different. "Hey, Commander," called out Sergeant Betty Cole from the communications desk. "I'm picking up something weird on the long-range sensors." Morrison walked over to her station, bringing his terrible coffee with him. "What kind of weird?" "It's a signal, but not from any human source. The computer is trying to translate it, but it's taking a while. The language is completely unknown." Morrison frowned. In the 3 years that humans had been exploring this part of space, they had never encountered any alien species. Earth scientists had always wondered if humanity was alone in the universe. If this signal was what it seemed to be, it would change everything. "How long for the translation program to finish?" he asked. "Maybe another hour," Cole replied. "The signal keeps repeating, so the computer has a lot of data to work with." Morrison nodded and returned to his station. An hour later, Cole called out again. "Translation is complete, sir. You're going to want to hear this." Morrison walked back over and read the translated message on Cole's screen. His coffee cup slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor, but he did not notice. The message was a desperate plea for help. An alien species called the Caparians was being destroyed by something called the Vorac Empire. They had sent this message to everyone they could reach, begging for someone, anyone, to help them survive. "How far away is this coming from?" Morrison asked. Cole checked her instruments. "About 47 light years from here, in the direction of the Galactic core." Morrison stared at the message for a long moment. Somewhere out there, intelligent beings were dying. They were calling for help and no one was answering. The thought made him sick. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," he said. "Priority Alpha." "Sir, that's for extreme emergencies only," Cole reminded him. Morrison looked at her seriously. "Sergeant, I think first contact with a dying alien civilization qualifies as an extreme emergency." While Cole worked to establish the connection, Morrison read the message again. The Caparians seemed to be peaceful people, much like many humans imagined aliens would be. They had no weapons, no experience with war, no way to defend themselves against an enemy that killed for pleasure. The connection to Earth came through, and Morrison found himself talking directly to Admiral Pete Richardson, head of the Deep Space Command. "Admiral, we've received what appears to be an alien distress call. They're asking for military assistance against an aggressive enemy." There was a long pause. Then Richardson's voice came through, steady and calm. "Send me everything, Commander. Full data package, translation files, everything you've got." "Yes, sir." "What should we do in the meantime?" Another pause. "Nothing, Commander. This is way above your pay grade. Just keep monitoring and send me updates if anything changes." The connection ended and Morrison sat back in his chair. Somewhere in space, people were dying while calling for help that would never come. At least he thought it would never come. He was wrong. Admiral Pete Richardson sat in his office deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, staring at the data that had come from Blackwater Station. The translated message played on his screen for the 5th time, and it still gave him chills. Somewhere out there, an entire civilization was being wiped out, and they were begging for help that no one seemed able to give. He picked up his secure phone and dialed a number he had memorized years ago. "Mr. President, we have a situation." 30 minutes later, Richardson was in a video conference with the President, the Secretary of Defense, and the heads of all major space agencies. The discussion was brief and intense. "How sure are we that this message is real?" asked the President. "Our best linguists and computer experts have analyzed it," Richardson replied. "It's genuine. We're looking at first contact with an alien species, and they're asking for military help." The Secretary of Defense leaned forward. "What kind of military capabilities do we have in that region?" Richardson pulled up a star chart. "The UES Defiance is currently on patrol about 12 light years from the Caparian system. She's our newest heavy cruiser, fully armed and equipped for long-range operations." "One ship against an entire empire?" the President asked. "It's what we have available, sir. The Defiance has a crew of 200 of our best people, and she's armed with the latest weapons technology." The room fell quiet for a moment. Everyone understood what they were discussing. This would be humanity's first contact with alien life, and it would happen during a war. "Do it," the President said finally. "Send the Defiance to help them." We can't let an entire species die when we have the power to help. 2 hours later, a priority message flashed across the communication system of the UES Defiance. Captain Lisa Harper read the orders twice before calling her senior officers to the briefing room. Harper was 42 years old and had spent her entire adult life in space. She had commanded 3 different ships and had never lost a crew member under her watch. Her short brown hair was starting to show gray at the temples, but her blue eyes were as sharp as ever. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said to her assembled officers, "we have new orders. We're going to make first contact with an alien species." Commander Ryan Mitchell, her second-in-command, raised an eyebrow. "First contact, ma'am? That's usually a job for diplomats, not a military vessel." Harper activated the main screen and showed them the Caparian distress message. "These people are under attack by something called the Vorac Empire. They've asked for military assistance, and we're the closest ship that can help." Dr. Maria Santos, the ship's science officer, leaned forward in her chair. She was a small woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes who had joined the crew specifically to study anything unusual they might encounter. "Captain, this is incredible. We're talking about an entire galactic civilization that we knew nothing about." "It gets more interesting," Harper continued. She displayed the data they had received about the galactic community. According to the message, there are dozens of intelligent species in this region of space. They have something called a galactic council, and space stations the size of cities. Lieutenant Amy Foster, the tactical officer, studied the information about the Vorac Empire. "These Vorac seem to be the only aggressive species in the area. Everyone else appears to be peaceful." "Too peaceful," Commander Mitchell added. "According to this data, none of them have military forces. They've evolved beyond warfare." Harper nodded. "Which means they have no way to defend themselves against the Vorac. That's where we come in." Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez spoke up from the back of the room. "Captain, are we sure we want to get involved in an alien war? This could be more dangerous than we know." "The decision has been made at the highest levels," Harper replied. "Our orders are clear. We proceed to the Kepler system immediately and render assistance to the indigenous population." 3 days later, the Defiance dropped out of hyperspace near Station Harmony. The massive space station was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It looked more like a work of art than a piece of technology, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to glow with their own light. "Incredible," Dr. Santos whispered as she studied the station through the ship's sensors. "The technology here is at least a century ahead of ours." Harper opened a communication channel. "Station Harmony, this is Captain Lisa Harper of the Earth vessel Defiance. We received a distress call from the Caparian Confederation and have come to offer assistance." The response came quickly, but it was not what they expected. "Earth vessel, you are not authorized to be in this system. Please identify your species and your homeworld's classification." Dr. Santos looked puzzled. "Homeworld classification? What does that mean?" Before Harper could respond, another voice came over the communication system. This one sounded different, more musical. "Captain Harper, this is Ambassador Zixthala of the Caparian Confederation. Did you say you came from Earth?" "That's correct, Ambassador. We received your distress call and came to help." There was a long pause. Then Zixthala's voice returned, and it sounded strange. "Captain, what is the environmental classification of your home world?" Harper looked at Dr. Santos, who shrugged. "I'm not sure what classification system you use, Ambassador. Earth is the 3rd planet from our sun. It has a varied climate with oceans, continents, and polar ice caps." Another pause. Then a different voice came on the channel, speaking quickly in what sounded like panic. "Did they say Earth? Sol 3? The Death World? What's a Death World?" Commander Mitchell asked quietly. Dr. Santos was already working at her station, trying to access the station's databases. "I'm picking up multiple communications from the station. They seem very agitated about something." Ambassador Zixthala's voice returned, much more carefully than before. "Captain Harper, we appreciate your offer of assistance. However, we were not aware that your species had developed space travel. When did humans achieve interstellar flight?" "About 50 years ago," Harper replied, still confused by the strange reaction. "Ambassador, is there some problem with us being here?" "No problem exactly," Zixthala said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "It's just that, well, your species evolved on what we classify as a Class 12 death world. Most civilized species assumed you had destroyed yourselves long ago." Lieutenant Foster looked up from her station. Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships moving away from the station. It looks like they're retreating from us. Dr. Santos had managed to access some of the station's public databases. Captain, I think I understand the problem. According to their records, Earth-type worlds are considered extremely dangerous. High gravity, violent weather, aggressive predators, natural disasters. They call them death worlds because most species couldn't survive on them. Harper felt a strange mix of amusement and concern. So they're afraid of us because we come from a dangerous planet? It's more than that, Santos continued, reading more data. According to their history files, every species in their galactic community evolved on what they call garden worlds. Stable climates, abundant resources, no major predators or natural threats. They've been peaceful for thousands of years because they never had to fight to survive. Commander Mitchell understood immediately, and we did. We've been fighting for survival our entire evolutionary history. Harper made a decision. Ambassador Zixathala, we understand your concerns about our origin. However, you called for help, and we're here to provide it. We'd like to dock with your station and discuss how we can assist with the Vorac threat. There was another long pause. Finally, Zixathala replied, Very well, Captain, but please understand that this is unprecedented. We have never encountered a species from a death world before. We will provide you with a docking bay, but we ask that you limit the number of your crew who come aboard. Understood, Ambassador. We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to help. As the Defiance approached the docking bay, Dr. Santos continued to study the galactic databases. What she found made her increasingly amazed and worried. Captain, she said quietly, according to their records, the average gravity on garden worlds is about 60% of Earth normal. The average temperature range is much smaller than ours. Most species have never experienced anything we would call extreme weather. What are you saying, Doctor? Harper asked. Santos looked up from her screen with a strange expression. I'm saying that to them we really are monsters. We're stronger, tougher, and more aggressive than anything they've ever encountered. We evolved in an environment that would kill most of them in minutes. Harper considered this as the ship settled into the docking bay. Through the viewports, she could see alien beings watching from behind protective barriers. They seemed curious but terrified. Then maybe, she said slowly, we're exactly what they need to fight the Vorac. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk, and Harper prepared to meet the galaxy's first death world species had encountered in thousands of years. She had no idea that she was about to change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Captain Harper walked through the docking tube that connected her ship to Station Harmony. Behind her came Commander Mitchell and Dr. Santos. They had left the rest of the crew on the Defiance. Following Ambassador Zixathala's request to bring as few humans as possible, the air in the tube smelled strange, like flowers mixed with metal. The walls were smooth and curved, glowing softly with their own light. Everything looked organic, as if the station had been grown rather than built. The gravity is lighter here, Mitchell observed, maybe 70% of Earth normal. Consistent with what we learned about Garden World, Santos replied, checking her tablet. Most species here evolved in lower gravity than we're used to. They reached the end of the tube and stepped into a large chamber. The ceiling was high and covered with what looked like living plants that gave off a soft blue light. The floor was smooth and slightly springy under their feet. Ambassador Zixathala waited for them in the center of the room. She was about as tall as Dr. Santos, with translucent blue skin that flickered with patterns of color. Her large eyes seemed to take up half her face, and she wore no clothing that the humans could identify. Next to her stood two other aliens. One looked like it was made of living crystal, sparkling in the light. The other was completely different, floating in what appeared to be a water-filled transparent suit. Captain Harper, Zixathala said, her voice coming through a small device she held. Welcome to Station Harmony. I am Ambassador Zixathala, as you know. These are Counselor Veltar of the Aquarian Alliance and Representative Nixola of the Crystal Collective. Harper stepped forward, and she noticed that all three aliens took a small step back. Thank you for receiving us, Ambassador. We're honored to meet you. The patterns on Zixathala's skin shifted to different colors. Santos watched carefully, trying to understand what the changes meant. Fear, perhaps, or nervousness. Please follow me, Zixathala said. We have prepared a meeting room where we can discuss your offer of assistance. They walked through corridors that seemed more like tunnels through a living organism than the hallways of a space station. Other aliens watched them pass from a safe distance, Some had multiple arms, others had no visible limbs at all. A few looked like walking plants with eyes. Incredible diversity, Santos whispered to Mitchell. Dozens of different evolutionary paths all living together peacefully. The meeting room was circular with a high ceiling. The walls showed images of space, making it feel like they were floating in the void. A round table sat in the center, with chairs that had been hastily modified to accommodate human physiology. Please sit, Zixthala said. The three aliens took seats across from the humans, maintaining as much distance as the table would allow. Harper sat down carefully. The chair was comfortable but obviously designed for someone much smaller and lighter than humans. Ambassador, we understand that our presence here is unusual. We want you to know that we come in peace and only wish to help. Veltar, the floating alien, spoke through his translation device. His voice was slow and melodic. Captain Harper, we appreciate your intentions. However, we must ask some questions about your species and your world. Of course, Harper replied. Our databases indicate that Sol 3, your Earth, has a surface gravity of 9.8 meters per second squared. Is this correct? Dr. Santos answered. Yes, that's correct. The three aliens exchanged what seemed to be meaningful looks. Nixola, the crystal being, spoke next. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. Such gravity would crush most of our species within minutes. How do you survive such conditions? We evolved there, Santos explained. Our bodies are adapted to that gravity level. To us, it's normal. And the weather systems on your world, Zixthala continued. Our sensors indicate regular storms with wind speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, precipitation that falls as frozen water, temperature variations of 50 degrees or more between seasons. Mitchell nodded. That sounds about right. We call those normal weather patterns. The aliens seemed stunned. Veltar's translator struggled with his next words. Normal? Captain Harper, such conditions would qualify as natural disasters on most civilized worlds. How does your species function in such an environment? Harper was beginning to understand the full scope of the cultural gap between humanity and these peaceful species. We adapt. We build shelters, develop technology, work together to survive. That's what our species has always done. But surely your world has regions of peace and safety, Nixola asked. Areas where your people can live without constant threat? Santos shook her head. Even our safest areas have challenges. Earthquakes, floods, storms, disease. And that's before you consider the predators? Predators? Zixthala's skin pattern shifted to what looked like alarm. Animals that hunt and kill other animals for food, Harper explained. Many of them were faster, stronger, or more dangerous than early humans. We survived by becoming smarter and working together. The three aliens sat in stunned silence for a moment. Finally, Veltar spoke. And your species? Hunts other creatures for sustenance? Some humans do, yes, Mitchell replied. Though most of our food comes from agriculture now. We grow plants and raise animals for food. Raise animals? To kill them? Nixola asked, her crystal form dim with what might have been horror. It's how we survived, Harper said gently. Our world didn't provide abundant resources freely. We had to take what we needed to live. Zixthala was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke carefully. Captain, may I ask about your species' history of conflict? Dr. Santos and Commander Mitchell both looked at Captain Harper. This was the question they had been expecting, and the one that would be hardest to answer honestly. We have fought wars, Harper said simply. Many wars over many thousands of years. Sometimes for resources, sometimes for territory, sometimes because we couldn't resolve our differences peacefully. How many wars? Veltar asked. Santos had prepared for this question during the trip to the station. It's impossible to give an exact number. Probably thousands of major conflicts over our recorded history. The aliens stared at them. Zixthala's skin patterns were cycling through colors rapidly. Thousands. Isn't how much time. About 10,000 years of recorded history, Harper replied. 10,000 years, Nixola repeated slowly. Most species in the galaxy have not had a single violent conflict in 50,000 years or more. Mitchell leaned forward. May I ask how your species resolved conflicts before you became peaceful? We didn't have conflicts, Zixthala said, sounding confused. When resources are abundant and the environment is safe, there is little reason for disagreement. But surely you face challenges, Harper pressed. Natural disasters, resource shortages, disagreements between groups? Our worlds are stable, Veltar explained. Weather is predictable, resources are plentiful, and our populations are small. When rare problems occurred, we discussed solutions until everyone agreed. Santos began to understand. So you never developed the concept of zero-sum competition. You never had to fight for survival because there was always enough for everyone. Exactly, Nixola said. This is why we are all so concerned about your presence here. Your species represents something we thought was impossible. Intelligent beings who evolved through violence and competition. Harper chose her words carefully. We understand your concern. But that same evolutionary pressure that you find frightening is what might allow us to help you with the Vorac. Explain, Zixathala said. Commander Mitchell activated a small holographic projector he had brought. It showed tactical displays of the Vorac fleet movements that they had studied during the trip. The Vorac use overwhelming force and intimidation, he explained. They've been successful because none of their enemies knew how to fight back effectively. Your species are peaceful and civilized, which is admirable, but that same peaceful nature means you have no experience with warfare. And you do, Veltar said quietly. Unfortunately, yes, Harper admitted. We've spent our entire evolutionary history learning how to survive against impossible odds. We've fought against nature, against predators, and against each other. It's made us very good at warfare, Santos added. What you see as our greatest weakness, our violent origins, might actually be the key to stopping the Vorac. Zixathala was quiet for a long time, her skin patterns shifting slowly. Finally, she spoke. Captain Harper, I must ask directly. Are you proposing to fight the Vorac Empire? With 1 ship and 200 crew members? Harper looked at her officers, then back at the aliens. Ambassador, how many Vorac ships are attacking your worlds? Our intelligence suggests approximately 300 vessels of various sizes. Mitchell whistled softly. Those are not good odds. No, Harper agreed. But we've faced worse odds before and survived. The question is, do you want our help or not? The 3 aliens conferred quietly in their own languages for several minutes. Finally, Zixathala turned back to the humans. Captain, we will be honest with you. Your species terrifies us. Everything about your evolution, your world, and your history goes against everything we understand about civilized life, but she paused, and her skin showed patterns that Santos was beginning to recognize as determination, mixed with desperate hope. The Vorac invasion fleet moved through space like a dark cloud of death. 300 ships of different sizes spread across the void, all heading toward Celestia Prime. At the center of the fleet was the massive command ship Worldender, a vessel so large it could be seen with the naked eye from the surface of a planet. Fleet Commander Krathavol stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical displays with satisfaction. His reptilian features showed no emotion, but inside he felt the familiar pleasure that came before a successful conquest. The Caparians would fall just like all the others before them. Status report, he ordered in his deep, gravelly voice. All ships are maintaining formation, replied his tactical officer. We will reach the outer edge of the Caparian system in 6 hours. And their defenses? Minimal as expected. 12 small patrol vessels with no significant weapons. Their military is designed for rescue operations, not warfare. Krathavol nodded. It was always the same with these peaceful species. They built beautiful cities and created wonderful art. But they never learned the most important lesson in the universe. The strong take what they want from the weak. Prepare the standard intimidation broadcast, he ordered. Perhaps some of them will surrender quickly and save us the trouble of destroying everything. But as the Vorac fleet approached the edge of the Caparian system, something unexpected happened. A single ship dropped out of hyperspace directly in their path. Sir, the tactical officer called out, confusion clear in his voice. We have an unknown vessel on our sensors. Krathavol looked at the main screen. The ship was smaller than even their smallest escort vessels. It looked strange too, built with straight lines and sharp angles instead of the flowing curves that most species preferred. Identify it, he ordered. Scanning now. Sir. The officer worked at his station for a moment. It appears to be from an unknown species. The design is completely unfamiliar. Computer estimates approximately 200 crew members. Krathavol stared at the lone vessel sitting in front of his massive fleet. 200 beings against his army of nearly 50,000 warriors. It was almost insulting. Send them a warning, he said. Tell them to move aside or be destroyed. The message was sent, but the response was not what anyone expected. Instead of fleeing or begging for mercy, the unknown ship sent back a simple reply. "This is Captain Lisa Harper of the Earth vessel Defiance. You are ordered to withdraw from Caparian space immediately. If you do not comply, we will consider you hostile and act accordingly." The bridge fell silent. Even the normally emotionless Krathvoll felt surprised. A single tiny ship was ordering his entire fleet to retreat. "Sir," the communication officer said hesitantly. "Should we respond?" Krathvoll's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "No response necessary. Destroy them." On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Harper watched as the Vorac fleet changed formation. The smaller ships moved forward while the larger vessels hung back, preparing to watch the show. "They're taking the bait," Lieutenant Foster reported from the tactical station. "Looks like about 20 ships breaking off to attack us." Commander Mitchell studied the enemy formation. Classic overwhelming force tactics. They're used to their enemies either running away or being destroyed quickly. Dr. Santos was at her science station, analyzing the Vorac ships with every sensor the Defiance possessed. "Captain, I'm reading interesting weaknesses in their design. Their shields are powerful, but they're designed to stop the kind of weapons that peaceful species might use. And their formation is built for intimidation, not tactical efficiency." Harper nodded. During the 3 days it had taken to reach the battlefield, her crew had studied every piece of information the Caparians had about Vorac technology. The picture that emerged was of a species that had never faced serious opposition. "All stations prepare for combat," Harper ordered. "Remember, we're not just fighting for the Caparians. We're representing all of humanity here. Let's show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do." The Vorac attack ships approached in a straight line, firing their massive energy weapons as soon as they came into range. Their strategy was simple: use overwhelming firepower to destroy the enemy before they could respond. But the Defiance was not like any enemy they had faced before. "Evasive maneuvers," Harper commanded. The human ship moved like a living thing. It rolled, dived, and twisted through space, avoiding the Vorac energy beams with movements that seemed impossible. The alien crews watched in confusion as their target refused to sit still and be destroyed. "Return fire," Harper ordered. The Defiance's weapons were different from anything in the galaxy. While most species had developed energy weapons that were clean and efficient, humans had perfected the art of throwing solid objects at very high speeds. The ship's railguns fired streams of dense metal projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The first Vorac ship to be hit simply vanished. One moment it was there, firing its weapons and confident in its shields. The next moment it was expanding debris and superheated gas. "What happened?" Krathvoll demanded from his flagship. "What kind of weapon was that?" "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. The projectile penetrated their shields completely and destroyed the ship's power core. The second Vorac ship tried to change course, but the Defiance was already moving to attack it. Human weapons had been designed to fight other humans who were fast, smart, and very difficult to kill. Against aliens who had never experienced real warfare, they were devastatingly effective. Lieutenant Foster's fingers danced across her targeting controls with the skill of someone whose species had been perfecting violence for thousands of years. Target acquired. Firing. Another Vorac ship died. "This is impossible," Krathvoll snarled. "All ships, attack Formation 7. Surround that vessel and destroy it." But the humans had anticipated this move. Commander Mitchell had studied the Vorac formations during their approach and had identified the weaknesses that came from a lack of real combat experience. "They're trying to surround us," he reported, moving to exploit the gaps in their formation. The Defiance dove into the middle of the Vorac fleet, using their own ships as cover. The aliens found themselves unable to fire without hitting their own vessels, while the human ship continued to pick them off one by one. Chief Engineer Rodriguez monitored the ship's systems from engineering. "Shields holding at 80%. Power core operating at full efficiency. We can keep this up for hours if necessary." But hours were not necessary. Within 30 minutes, the Defiance had destroyed or disabled 15 Vorac ships. The remaining 5 were trying to retreat, but human weapons had longer range than Vorac shields were designed to handle. "Sir," the Vorac tactical officer reported to Krathvoll, "the advance force has been eliminated." Krathvoll stared at the tactical display in disbelief. A single ship had destroyed 20 of his vessels without taking significant damage. It was impossible, but the evidence was right there on his screens. "What are these creatures?" he whispered. His science officer had been analyzing the enemy vessel throughout the battle. "Sir, I'm detecting readings that suggest the ship's crew evolved on a high-gravity world. Preliminary estimates suggest their home planet has gravity levels that would be lethal to most known species." "A Deathworld species," Krathvoll said slowly. "I thought they were myths." The communication officer spoke up. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." "Put it through." Captain Harper's image appeared on the main screen. Her face was calm and professional, but there was something in her eyes that made even Krathvoll feel uncomfortable. "Fleet Commander," she said, somehow knowing his rank. "I am Captain Lisa Harper of the Earth vessel Defiance. You have attacked peaceful beings who called for help. You have invaded their space and destroyed their worlds. This ends now." Krathvoll found his voice. "What are you? Your ship is impossibly small, your crew insignificant in number. How do you stand against the might of the Vorac Empire?" Harper's expression remained calm, but there was something predatory in her smile. "We're humans, Commander. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We survived by becoming very good at killing things that threatened us." She paused, and Krathvoll realized he was seeing something the galaxy had never encountered before. A species that had evolved to be warriors. "You've spent your empire's existence attacking beings who couldn't fight back," Harper continued. "Congratulations. You've just met a species that can." The transmission ended and Krathvoll stared at the empty screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders, but for the first time in his military career, the fleet commander didn't know what to do. On the Defiance, Captain Harper turned to her crew. "Status report." "All systems green," Rodriguez reported. "Minor shield damage easily repaired." "Enemy fleet is holding position," Foster added. "They seem to be confused." Harper nodded. "Open a channel to Station Harmony." Ambassador Zixathala's image appeared on the screen. Her skin patterns showing colors that Dr. Santos was learning meant amazement and hope. "Captain Harper," she said, "we've been monitoring the battle. Is it true? Did you really defeat a Vorac attack force?" "The Battle of Celestia Prime lasted 18 hours and changed the galaxy forever." Captain Harper studied the tactical display on her bridge as the last Vorac ships limped away into hyperspace. Around the Defiance, space was filled with the wreckage of what had once been a mighty invasion fleet. Only 37 Vorac vessels had escaped. The rest were either destroyed or had surrendered when their crews realized they were fighting something beyond their understanding. "Final damage report," Harper ordered. Chief Engineer Rodriguez looked up from his station. "Minor hull damage on decks 4 and 7. Shield generators need some repair work, but nothing we can't handle. No casualties." Commander Mitchell shook his head in amazement. 200 humans against 50,000 Vorac warriors, and we didn't lose a single person. Dr. Santos was studying the sensor readings from the battle. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Vorac surrender transmissions. They keep using the same word over and over. Their translators are having trouble with it, but I think it means something like nightmare creatures or death spirits." Harper almost smiled. "I suppose from their perspective, that's exactly what we are." The communication system activated, and Ambassador Zixthala's image appeared on the main screen. Her skin patterns were cycling through colors so quickly it was hard to follow them. "Captain Harper," she said, her voice filled with emotions the translator was struggling to interpret. "The entire Galactic Council has been watching the battle through our long-range sensors. What you have accomplished today is impossible by every standard we understand. We're just glad we could help, Ambassador," Harper replied. "Help?" Zixthala's pattern shifted to what Dr. Santos was learning, meant something close to amazement. "Captain, you have destroyed the most powerful military force in known galactic history. In 18 hours, your single ship accomplished what the combined efforts of dozens of civilizations could not do in decades." Harper looked around at her crew. They had done their job, but she was beginning to understand that the consequences would reach far beyond saving one species from invasion. "Captain," Zixthala continued, "I have been instructed by the Galactic Council to extend a formal invitation to Earth. We would like your species to join our community as our protectors." The bridge fell silent. Mitchell was the first to speak. "Protectors? Ambassador, we're just one ship with 200 people." "Yes." Thala said quietly. But you have shown us something we had forgotten was possible. You have shown us that evil can be fought and defeated. For the first time in thousands of years, the peaceful species of the galaxy have hope. 3 months later, Admiral Lisa Harper stood in her new office on Station Harmony, looking out at the incredible view of space through the massive, transparent walls. Her promotion had come with her new assignment as Earth's first military liaison to the Galactic Council. The changes had been rapid and dramatic. Earth had gone from being an unknown death world to the most important planet in the galaxy almost overnight. Delegations from dozens of species were traveling to the Sol system, eager to meet the legendary warriors who had defeated the Vorac Empire. Commander Mitchell, now Captain Mitchell of the UES Defiance, entered her office carrying a stack of data tablets. The morning reports. Admiral, he said, setting them on her desk. 3 more species have requested Earth protection agreements. The Botanical Confederation wants us to establish a base in their system, and the Crystal Collective is offering to share their shield technology in exchange for military training. Harper picked up one of the tablets and read through the summary. What about the Vorac Empire? Complete collapse, Mitchell reported. Without their fleet, their subject worlds are declaring independence. Most of the surviving Vorac leaders are requesting asylum rather than trying to rebuild their military. And Fleet Commander Krathval? Mitchell's expression became more serious. Still in our detention facility on Earth. He keeps asking to speak with you personally. Harper considered this. The Vorac commander had been captured when his flagship's crew had mutinied and surrendered, rather than face destruction. He had spent the last 3 months in human custody, and according to the reports, the experience had changed him significantly. Schedule a meeting, she decided. I'm curious to hear what he has to say. 2 days later, Harper sat across from Krathval in a secure conference room. The former fleet commander looked smaller than she remembered from their brief communication during the battle. His reptilian features showed signs of stress, and his posture suggested defeat rather than the arrogance she had seen before. Admiral Harper, he said through the translation device, I have requested this meeting to ask you a question that has been troubling me. Go ahead. Why did you spare my life? When my ship surrendered, your forces could have destroyed us easily. In Vorac culture, defeat means death, but you took prisoners instead. I do not understand. Harper studied the alien commander for a moment. Because we're not you, Commander. We don't kill unnecessarily. But you are warriors. You are bred for violence. Your entire species evolved through combat. How can you choose mercy when you have the power to destroy? That's exactly why we choose mercy, Harper replied. We know the cost of violence because we've lived with it our entire history. We fight when we have to, but we prefer peace when possible. Krathval was quiet for a long moment. My species believed that strength meant taking what you wanted from those weaker than yourself. We thought that was the natural order of the universe. It's one way to live, Harper admitted, but not the only way. The other species in the galaxy, they had evolved beyond violence entirely. They had no strength to resist us. But you have both strength and restraint. You have the power to destroy but choose to protect instead. Harper nodded. That's what we're trying to do. Krathval looked up at her with something that might have been respect. Admiral, I formally request that the surviving members of my people be allowed to learn from your example. We have been destroyers for so long that we have forgotten how to build. Perhaps it is time for us to try a different path. 6 months after the Battle of Celestia Prime, Dr. Maria Santos stood in the observation deck of the new Earth Embassy on Station Harmony. The space station had been expanded significantly to accommodate the growing human presence, and ships from Earth arrived regularly carrying diplomats, scientists, and military advisors. She was reading a report from Earth's Xenology Department when Captain Mitchell joined her at the viewport. Interesting reading? He asked. Santos held up the tablet. A study on the psychological impact of our arrival on galactic civilization. Apparently, we've completely changed how these species think about conflict and security. Through the viewport, they could see ships from dozens of different worlds. Some were the elegant artistic vessels that had existed before humanity's arrival. Others were new designs that incorporated human military technology and defensive systems. Look at that, Mitchell said, pointing to a ship that was just docking. That's a Caparian patrol vessel, but it's armed with human-designed weapons. 6 months ago, the idea of a Caparian military ship would have been impossible. Santos nodded. We've given them something they never had before, the ability to defend themselves. But I wonder if we've also given them something they're not ready for. What do you mean? The capacity for violence, Santos replied. For thousands of years, these species have been peaceful because they had no choice. They literally couldn't conceive of warfare. Now they're learning from us, and some of them are learning very quickly. Mitchell considered this. Are you saying we've made a mistake? Not a mistake exactly, but we've definitely changed things that can never be changed back. The galaxy will never be as innocent as it was before we arrived. They watched as another ship approached the station, this one carrying the distinctive markings of the Vorac Reformation government. The former empire was now a collection of small, peaceful states trying to rebuild their civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Mitchell said finally. Innocence is a luxury that you can only afford when there are no real threats. We've shown them that they can remain peaceful while still being able to protect themselves. Santos smiled. The galaxy's growing up, and we're the ones teaching it how to be strong. Ambassador Zix Thala approached them from across the observation deck. Her skin patterns now showed colors that Santos had learned indicated confidence and determination rather than the fear and desperation they had shown during their first meeting. Admiral Harper asked me to find you, she said to Mitchell. The Council is ready to vote on the Galactic Defense Initiative. Mitchell nodded. The initiative was a plan to create a combined military force with human advisors, training volunteers from across the galaxy. It would be the first time in galactic history that peaceful species would voluntarily create a military organization. Any idea how the vote will go? Santos asked. Zix Thala's patterns shifted to what Santos now recognized as humor. Dr. Santos, 6 months ago the idea of a galactic military would have been rejected as barbaric and impossible. Today every single species on the Council is voting in favor. What changed their minds? Mitchell asked.